all that stuff has been sifted out, and it's got this nice, beautiful, usable texture. It's great for potting mixes. It's great for as a soil amendment. It's great for teas. It's nice. Welcome everybody. Welcome to my channel. This is Brian's Permaculture Project. My name is Brian, and the very first series of videos that I did on YouTube was on building this trommel that you see here. A trommel is used for filtering out finer compost from some of the clumpier, thicker stuff. And so I've got 4 videos describing how I put this thing together. And, you know, I hadn't really talked about how I eventually got this thing powered up and what it took to do it. So that's what this video is all about. So for those of you who haven't seen the other videos in this series, just a quick little run through of the trommel. Hardware cloth on some bike rims. Those bike rims are kept on a track using these casters here, these little wheels. I've got this bike rim here in the middle that serves as a drive wheel. And the drive wheel is being driven by this electric motor. So as this turns, you put some compost in here, and the compost filters out anything that's smaller than 1/4 of an inch in size. And then the larger pieces end up kind of making their way to the back of the trommel, and they eventually fall out the back. And it's all just made out of a wooden frame, so you can see I've got a wooden frame here that holds the casters to keep the bike rims in place. I have an axle, so you can see the axle here. And that axle is basically to hold this drive wheel in place. Okay, so the axle isn't really used for these outer rims here. It's really only used for this drive wheel to keep the drive wheel centered. And you'll notice I've got this little board here. This is kind of a makeshift setup here where the trommel was flinging a lot of compost out this direction. So we put the board here so that whatever compost is flung onto this would eventually make its way down below. So down below we just put these are 12-gallon totes that you can get at Home Depot or Costco. We put those down on the bottom, and the compost gets filtered out of the trommel, gets maybe flung up here, but eventually it falls down into these totes down here. Any compost that's too large to make it through the trommel will eventually go out the backside of the trommel. And so we have this little 55-gallon container that we put at the end here, and that catches any of the compost that's too big to fit through the screener. And it just lands in here, and then we can go put that in the garden as a mulch, or, you know, build air prune beds with it, or any number of different things. So the compost that isn't fine enough to go through is still a really useful resource. We just don't use it for like a packaged, finished product. All right, so let me explain the setup a little bit here. So I've just got a traditional 110-volt AC input that comes into this unit here, which I'll talk about in a minute. At first I had a 110-volt AC single-phase motor that was driving this, and I couldn't really control the speed of the motor. And so I switched motors to this 3-phase 220-volt AC motor. And to be able to interface with this, I had to get what's called a variable frequency drive. And this variable frequency drive basically converts single-phase AC into 3-phase AC. And it also steps up the voltage from 110 volts into 220 volts. And so you can see on the unit here, I've got this 110-volt AC that comes in. You've got your traditional power, neutral, ground that plug in here, and then you've got your 4-cable, three-phase cable with your ground, and then your 3 power cables that comes out. of the VFD, variable frequency drive, and attaches to the motor here. So again, this is a 3-phase 220 volt, and this VFD takes this 110 single phase into 220 volt 3-phase. What the variable frequency drive does is it basically controls the speed of the input, the electrical input that's coming into the unit. So faster cycles of electrical signal will give you faster rotation of the unit, and slower electrical cycles will give you slower rotations. And it'll also control the shape of the electrical signal as well. And so that's what's used then to control the speed of this, is that it's got a little knob here, and by increasing or decreasing the frequency that comes out of the VFD, that will increase or decrease the speed of the rotation of the electrical motor. This unit is remarkable in all the flexibility that it opens up to us. So we can now go forward or reverse. We can increase it all the way up to 50 hertz and drop it down all the way down to 0 hertz. It's got some extra plug-ins so that you can have this permanently mounted somewhere, and then have a separate control panel that plugs into the back of this. And those plug-ins will basically allow you to control it remotely through a separate control panel, or you could plug it into a computer and have it plugged into like an Arduino or a computer that would then be able to, you know, turn it off and on according to different inputs, like from a thermometer or, you know, some other feedback device. So really, really powerful tool here. I got this for about 50 bucks on eBay. It came from China. It was shipped directly from China to my mailbox. All that for 50 bucks, including shipping. It's held up remarkably well. I've used it now for a couple of years at this point, and it's worked beautifully. It's turned this into just an amazing tool here when working with compost. So that's the setup. You know, I can't say it's for everybody. If you're just doing a trommel for your own compost, it may be overkill, but we work with a lot of compost, and we needed to be able to reduce it from a 2-person job to a 1-person job, and this does the trick beautifully. So I'll turn it on, we'll power it up, and I'll give you a little demonstration. Okay, so you can vary the hertz all the way from 0 hertz up to 50 hertz, and just hit the on button. So there, it's going nice and slow. Even when it's going real slow like this, it still has plenty of torque. And so you could actually put compost in there right now, and even with a lot of compost in there, at that very slow speed, it has enough torque to manage that heavy load of compost perfectly fine. It goes up to 50 hertz. Now, we don't usually turn it up that high. Because when it is that high, it tends to fling compost everywhere. And that's exactly why we wanted to reduce the speed, is to make it not fling compost everywhere. So we usually run it, 10 to 15 hertz, somewhere along these lines. It's got forward and reverse, so here, forward. And yeah, for us, it does everything that we need. So I've got some compost here, and I will give you a little live demonstration. When using this trommel, it's kind of a dance. It's a little bit of a dance of buckets. So I have this 12-gallon tote here. Got some compost in here. This is worm castings, actually. And I usually just grab it with my hands, break it up a little bit. Can put it in here. And then you can see the larger chunks are in here, and they'll slowly make their way down the trommel, because the trommel is slightly elevated. This part of the trommel is higher that part of the trommel is lower. So they slowly make their way down and fall out the back, and the finer stuff gets filtered through the trommel into the buckets below. So I just do this, I break it up with my hands as best I can. You can see the two bins down here. So the first bin catches most of the sifted compost, second bin catches a little bit, and then the large clumps end up in here. And this is still useful. You can put this in the garden, or you can make a tea out of it, or you can make a raised bed out of it, or I use it for air prune beds. So it's still useful, it's just not what like a customer would want as a finished product. Okay, so this is after one screening. As you can see, it's this nice, beautiful consistency. There's no lumps. It's captured most of the larger debris, so the large eggshells, the avocado skins, the mango peels, all that stuff has been sifted out, and it's got this nice, beautiful, usable texture. It's great for potting mixes. It's great for as a soil amendment. It's great for teas. It's nicely aerated. It holds moisture really well. Yeah, so that's what we get after one screening. And then we also have an 1/8 inch trommel as well. This is a 1/4 inch. We also have an 1/8 inch that'll take this all the way down into a super fine consistency. In case anyone's interested in like a really fine consistency. This right here is what's been filtered out. As you can see, it's a lot of clumps and stuff, so you could theoretically probably run this through the trommel again. The thing is that you also get a lot of debris in here. So this, looks like an avocado skin, egg peel, more avocados, large seeds, here's a rock. All this stuff has been filtered out, so basically the quality goes down. So even though there's some good usable compost in there, the quality is such that even though you could run it through again and break up some of those clumps, it's probably not going to be worth your while to do that. So I hope this demonstration and this little setup that I've shown you here has been helpful in all of your composting ambitions. It's certainly not for everybody. If you are just like a home composter, I wouldn't worry too much about screening my compost. All that stuff, like what we filtered out here, that's all totally usable stuff. And as a home gardener, you don't care if you have some mango peels and some avocado peels in there. It's just going to add texture and organic matter to the soil. But if you're looking at something like selling compost in your local area, you want a presentable product, then something like this was very inexpensive. This was a couple $100 all in all, probably $300 all in all. It works great. We've used it for many, many hours, and it has cut a tremendous amount of time from what we do, and it has also withstood all those hours, and it's a really, really solid unit still. So for not that much money, you can get a pretty decent tool that will reduce your workload, increase your efficiency, and help you take your composting game to the next level. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful, and I wish you guys best of luck on all of your projects.